Hey, this is Kit Mickey, and this is my submission for the 1904 Labs Game Jam on October 21st, 2021. So first, a demo of the game. It's a tank game, kind of inspired by some of those old, like, shoot 'em up, top-down shooters, where you can drive around, blow things up, get points. Added some enemy tanks that you can blow up, some physics. Uh, Wanted to keep that kind of top-down movement style where you can move the turret freely from the body of the tank, and also the body of the tank turns based on what direction you're facing. And then hopefully later I'd add some more interesting terrain. And then the final boss. Cool. So that's what I have so far. Just wanted to take everyone through kind of a tour of how I made this happen. So my scene over here on the left, I have a camera, kind of all my different assets. The uh, all the tanks are kind of their own prefabs over here. So there's kind of a couple things that I want to talk about. The first was the movement, which I think was the most difficult and most important part. So the enemy tank, or the player's tank here, we go to the scene. Uh, this is the player's tank. It has a couple of different components which you can expand. The uh, first one is the tower, which is rotated using the mouse. And then the base, which rotates using the WASD keys. And then the tank itself, the whole thing moves with the WASD keys. So the difference between rotation and movement. Um, all of the wheels and stuff are just considered to be part of the base right now. Uh, it is on the right using a rigid body and a box collider so that I can smash into things. Um, and then I have for shooting, I'll talk about this kind of invisible asset here, but it just helps me figure out kind of where the barrel is. So first, let's open up our project here. So there's still a lot of stuff in here, haven't exactly cleaned it up, but uh, the actual movement of the tank, essentially you get the player's inputs, the horizontal and vertical. This is basically the WASD keys, and then move your tank. I had some old code in here from when I was trying to just move it, but the problem with that is it's not physics based, um, so it looks kind of weird. So instead I found a different video that moved the tank using the velocity. And so what you get is the rigid body, and then apply the velocity directly. And then at the same time, uh, the tank body rotation is essentially figuring out where the player is driving, which direction. So that I just get the kind of the target position. So this is either, up, right, right, back right, all the different positions. I figure out kind of where they're trying to rotate to, and then based on that, use the linear interpolation between kind of the current rotation and where they're trying to rotate to, and then rotate the tank body to that gradually towards that state. And so that's why if you go to the game, if I face right, the tank gradually rotates right. If I go left, the tank gradually rotates left. If I go back, also back, right, up, right. So that way you get a nice smooth rotation of the body. And then at the same time as I press the arrow keys, I can move in any direction, but locked to kind of the direction I want the player to go, which is kind of in that upper right direction. Uh, the tank tower rotation, on the other hand, was a little bit trickier because I needed to figure out where the user is aiming using the mouse. So before we look at this code, actually I watched a different video linked here where you can figure out where the user is pointing by using a screen point to ray from the main camera, and then you use a raycast to figure out where the position is. So what I did first was, just like in that video, I implemented a small little function. You can kind of see the little white square on the ground. So that's where my mouse is pointing, and no matter kind of where I'm pointing it in the scene. So after I got that working, which was just a combination of essentially a little sprite that I had already imported, uh, then I went to actually focus on getting the tower itself to rotate. So in this case, it has the tank rotate script attached, uh, and also a layer mask, which is essentially just the ground and always the ground. Otherwise, I have the problem of pointing to kind of different uh, heights and stuff off things on the ground, not the ground itself. So for the rotate, so kind of same code as before. I do the screencast, screen point array, calculate where the mouse falls on the ground, and then I say, okay, get the target position of where the mouse is, with the exception that we're at the same height as where our tank barrel is currently, because I don't want the tank barrel to point up or down. And then calculate the relative position, and then use quaternion.look rotation to kind of figure out what rotation I need to perform. And then again, I use the linear interpolation to rotate the tank tower slowly to the current direction. So what you get is, now if I pointing right here to the left, tower slowly rotates. If I go to the right, tower slowly rotates to the right, and back and forth. Nice smooth rotation. So it took a while to figure out. Um, the destructible stuff is just using Brachy's tutorials. So this is the same code as in Brachy's great game tutorials. Essentially, the trick is when you detect something needs to be blown up, you spawn in a destroyed version, remove the current version, and then apply, play a little explosion particle effect, and then apply the destruction to the destroyed version. So in the example of let's just say an enemy tank. So this is pretty easy because the tank already came with multiple parts, which you can see, same as their player tank, base tower, all the wheels. Uh, the main difference is that before it gets destroyed, it has a rigid body and box collider on the whole tank itself, and then my script that says this object is destructible, and then it points to the explosion to play when it gets destroyed, and the destroyed version. And the destroyed version is the same, uh, except each of the individual components in the prefab have a box collider and a rigid body. And this is so when I apply the explosion force to the destroyed version, it'll cause all the pieces to explode away in that kind of fun physics effect that you see. So if I drive over to my tank here, blow it up, replaced it with the destroyed version, and then applies the physics to all the smaller pieces, which then you can smush around and all that fun stuff. The boxes work in exactly the same way. This is a complete box. When I shoot it, it spawns in the destroyed box and then applies the force to all the pieces. And then I also um, uh, you can then they all just become the individual pieces that you can apply physics to. You should, yep, also be able to collide with the box and blow it up that way. So that is a similar script that I called smash things, which is just trying to detect the collision between the tank and destructible items in the last thing I wanted to go through was the shooting. Oh, and then the UI. So the shooting, um, in this case, I'll also use the Brackeys tutorial. Essentially, it's just a cylinder that I spawn at the end of the turret. So if I go back to my player tank, go to the tower. So I actually added a small invisible uh, game object that sits right at the end of the tank barrel. And so this is where I'm going to spawn the tank bullet you can see down here, which is just a capsule with a capsule collider and a rigid body. And then to actually shoot it, I spawn it in at the end of the tank barrel and then apply force, velocity force to the pill when they every time that the player clicks the mouse button. And then the tank bullet itself also has like I mentioned before, it has a script. Tank bullet, so it'll play a small explosion, but essentially it has a delay. So if it goes off the map or something right now, it'll still blow up. Otherwise, if it collides with something that other than the player right now, then it'll explode. And to explode, you just destroy the tank bullet itself, play the explosion, and then same kind of code as to like detecting the collisions, um, where I just use a sphere collider to try to find nearby items. If it's destructible, then I blow it up, and then I do the collider again and apply the explosion force. So all this code's still pretty ugly, but last thing I wanted to show you guys was the UI, which is pretty simple. I didn't have time to make it too crazy, but if we switch to 2D mode here, you can see my screen. Um, I just got a high score at the top and some debug text, which hopefully I would transform later into like a HUD with maybe ammo or bullet types or something. So that just have three text elements right now. Found a nice custom font online and used that for my score. To update the score, it was kind of tricky because I needed a global way to track score. So there was a great tutorial on how to create a singleton. I used that to create this game manager object, which has a game manager singleton object attached to it, along with the score and the text to update, which is my high score at the top. The game manager itself is just a C# singleton. Here's the video if you want to find out how to do it, including this kind of code to create the singleton and keep it alive instead of destroying it all the time. And then just setting the score text, and then when it updates, set the score text to the score. And so the score just gets updated when you blow things up. So essentially in the destructible thing, we add 100 to the score. So all in all, pretty happy where I ended up. The movement was definitely the hardest part to figure out. And now I could probably maybe create a level and maybe some simple tank UI next. But pretty happy with it, learning Unity for the first time. Thanks.